Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. Got a lot to cover today. Jacob killed a buck. So I'm not going to ask how you're doing because you're doing pretty good, huh?
Doing pretty good. we need the clap emoji. Which one's the clap one?
It's not an emoji. It's a soundboard. It's not gonna show up on the thing.
Oh, damn.
So, anyways.
Well, why say emoji? That's weird. Yeah.
I don't know. Cause
Soundboard.
You're a weirdo.
Yep.
So yeah, Jacob, you killed a buck. We got a lot to talk about on this episode. Obviously, we're going to talk about the buck that Jacob shot, but also we're going to talk about some listener questions that were written in. We do those at the end of these podcasts. So if you want to skip ahead to the listener questions and you just do not care about anything that Jacob did with this buck, you can skip ahead to those. You can go look in the show notes for the description, and we'll have the timestamps down there.
And make sure you're watching this video. Make sure you're watching the video version of this podcast, guys, on YouTube. Okay, it's a lot more fun.
Yeah,
because we can.
Yeah, we're cutting in pictures of the buck, obviously, so people can see what the buck looks like on our YouTube channel. So yeah, y'all go check that out. But anyways, so yeah, we're gonna do listener questions at the end of this. So be sure to stick around for that. Anyways, Jacob, let's go over this hunt.
Oh, we ain't gonna talk about Catman?
Oh yeah, Catman. Man, I'm sorry. Catman.
Yeah, old Jonathan Bone. So this week's episode,
I'm just too excited.
Yeah, before Andrew jumps ahead, so we interviewed our buddy Jonathan Bone from Catman Outdoors. A lot of people know him as Catman from YouTube, and he's a guy who consistently kills just a ton of deer. He donates a ton of his deer for Hunters of the Hungry in Tennessee, but every year he kills. It seems 10 plus deer a year.
Yeah.
On average. A lot of them bow kills. He'll kill, quite a few during rifle season, muzzleloader season as well. And he lives in a part of Tennessee where you can kill, if I remember right, you can kill 3 does a day for the whole season. From like September 26th to like January the 1st.
Yep.
You kill 3 does a day.
Yep.
And when we were talking about discussing doing an episode on the topic of just like how do you get consistent at just getting on and killing deer? If your goal isn't necessarily, say you're new starting out and you're like, man, I'd love to kill a big buck, but I haven't even killed my first deer yet, or I haven't really killed a deer with my bow, or I haven't really had much just hunting experience in general. I'm just trying to have some experience and have some success just killing, whether it's a buck, any kind of buck, or a doe. I think Jonathan's a great guy to talk to about this topic just because he's so experienced and he's such a good woodsman. And he's really able to kind of simplify a lot of this stuff. One thing about Jonathan and his hunting style, he really doesn't try to overcomplicate anything. Like, he keeps it very, very streamlined on how he hunts. And he really came across that during the episode as well, which I thought was really good.
Yeah.
But, Andrew, what was, like, some of your takeaways kind of early on with the episode and just the overall discussion of getting on and finding how to have success just killing deer in general?
Yeah, I'm glad we did the episode because we get a lot of requests for that subject, actually. I mean, we get a lot of people that write in and they're like, hey, can y'all just do an episode on, like, how to go kill does? I mean, we all want to go kill big bucks, obviously, but we also all want to be able to go get on deer consistently. And I think that's one of the things that I got the most out of with Jonathan because, I mean, not that long ago, when I was still, like, really trying to come into my own with deer hunting and kind of figure out what I was doing, the mark of a successful hunt wasn't like seeing or killing a mature buck. It was seeing any deer, literally any deer. Like, because I know there's a lot of listeners who like go through this too, but like there's probably a lot of hunts that a lot of people have where they don't even see a single deer, and they're probably not even in a low deer density area.
Yeah,
and that was me for a long time. Just going out, and if I saw a deer, I was like, oh my gosh, I saw a deer. And for a long time, like the bar was just, obviously you're trying to kill a deer, but if you see a deer, it's a really good hunt. And, eventually, once I kind of got better and figured out how to, stay on deer pretty consistently, then the bar kind of raises. I think that's kind of your natural progression as a hunter. And so I feel like this is a really good episode to do with Jonathan because a lot of the stuff he was talking about, I feel like relates to that. Like it's a lot of good tips in there on how to just find deer and stay on them consistently, which is going to just make you a better deer hunter. I mean, you got to walk before you can run.
Well, you're going to be a better woodsman too.
Yeah, exactly. And I got to ask some stuff I was real curious about, like the trails.
Yeah.
Because we've actually hunted with Jonathan and scouted with Jonathan a couple times. And in these areas, I mean, back when we were hunting with him, that was back, like, I was really interested in trails back then specifically. And so we'd find like a big giant deer trail, and I'd be like, oh my gosh. And there'd be, there'd be in a big intersection. I'm like, this is where we need to hunt. Kind of like what we were talking about last week with how I grew up hunting with Mr. Benny and them. Trails were a big deal. And we'd hunt game trails. And Jonathan, he had kind of an interesting answer on that where he's like, yeah, I mean, I might put a camera on it, but I don't really care.
Well, you gotta realize he's in an area you can kill 3 does a day. So it's like a lot of the trails look very impressive, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're being used a ton. It's just there's so many deer there that at certain points of the year, and sometimes it might be. He mentioned this because you brought up the whole trail aspect. I just made a big old mess, man. I gotta clean this up.
What are you doing?
I got a hole in my mouth and hole in my lip, whatever, water fell out. So anyway, but because you asked him about you found like a real big trail on the side of a ridge line on like a drainage, you put a camera on it, and it was just like 2 or 3 does coming through there a couple times a week, and it made the trail look real impressive. And he mentioned, he's like, that happens a lot, but also like you'll find some trails that maybe get used a lot more during the summer or springtime that look real impressive when you get to deer season, but they just don't use those trails much at all come the fall and come the rut. And I've definitely seen that. Like I've gone to places, that's the one thing about especially summer scouting, you might find a big worn out trail, but it may be something that they're only using during the summertime. But like when the leaves start to change, leaves fall off, you start having more mass crop on the ground with acorns, they may not even be in that section much and use that trail system. But then you got guys like, we got, guest of the podcast, Jay McKay, who hunts an area that loves hunting trails. And it's like, it definitely can work, but it's like, you got to find like the right style of what works best for you. But the thing about Jonathan that I liked was just like, his thought process on simplifying, getting close to that thick cover, like when should you hunt feed sign versus when you should push a little bit closer to that cover and really pay attention to where your does are at. And the funny thing is, we did the interview with him, a couple weeks ago, and he just went out and killed a really nice buck. So he killed a really nice buck maybe 4 or 5 days after the interview.
Which is the thumbnail image for this YouTube video. So you can go to the YouTube video, and the thumbnail image is the buck that we're talking about.
And he killed it in an area. It was kind of fascinating. I mean, I haven't like necessarily jumped on a phone call with him, but just seeing like what he posted about it. An area like he had seen some bucks on everything, but he was kind of set up just again, kind of more in general, like how deer are gonna be working through. And that buck came slipping out, doing exactly what he was thinking some of the other deer were gonna do, and was able to get a really good shot opportunity, super close. I think he killed it under like 15 yards from him. So it's just the thing about like if you kind of focus on like what Jonathan talks about, I think you're become a much more well-rounded just deer hunter in general, and you'll understand like from those mishaps and just trying to find and kill does of when you're actually gonna have those opportunities with the bucks. Because I think the thing about Jonathan, and he talks about this, like sometimes he'll find a buck he'll try to kill during early bow season, but a lot of times he's just kind of hunting his way through, trying to get inventory of different bucks, and he's just trying to kill his does and trying to find where the deer are at. And then when that pre-rut kicks off, he's then able to kind of go in there and capitalize based off where he's finding the bucks on trail camera and where he's seeing observations, but also by hunting a decent bit, knowing where all the does are bedded at and where he should be positioned, especially during muzzleloader season or gun season, in order to get an opportunity to be able to see a buck going from one bedding area to another bedding area.
Yeah, for sure. And just the amount of deer he kills, like, I think at one point in there, he's like, I'll try to not pressure the spots too much. I might only kill 1 or 2 in there. I'm like, dang, that's pretty legit. I mean, it was a fun episode, man. I enjoyed talking about the creek crossing aspect as well as identifying the good kind of cover for your area. He was talking about hunting those cane breaks in the bottoms, which is pretty interesting. That's something that I've had luck with in Georgia and Alabama, and he's talking about having luck with it in Tennessee as well.
What's a cane break?
The cane break is like down in a creek bottom, or sometimes it doesn't have to be in a creek bottom. You can have them on the sides of hills. Where we were hunting in North Georgia in the mountains, I found a cane break up on like a hill. I don't know if you'd call it a cane break, but a bunch of switch cane was like way up on this mountain, and the deer were just freaking loving it. So switch cane would be our native bamboo, essentially. It is
native cane.
Yeah, it looks like bamboo, but it's cane, and it's native to North America. And back in the day, there was like vast areas of cane, and it was like big giant cane breaks. Actually, one place that has cane breaks still is Apalachicola. If anyone's familiar with there, Apalachicola Bay, where the rivers are coming out right there next to the town. When you look out over that delta, a lot of that you're seeing out there is actually cane. And it's pretty cool, and that used to cover like large areas, and deer love it because it's native habitat. It's what deer are like kind of meant to be in. But what I like finding it in is sometimes you'll find it in bottoms and in areas where you're otherwise not going to have any thick cover down low. You'll have a cane break down by that creek, and for maybe 50 yards on both sides of the creek or more than that, you've got river cane that is like waist high on us, which is just like perfect for deer, and they freaking love it. They'll go down in there and just hang out during the day. They'll bed in it. And I've had a lot, like I said, I've had a lot of luck with that in Alabama and Georgia. I actually got a pretty cool video of a spike walking up to me in Georgia in one of those. I was kind of easing through that cane break looking for sign. And this buck walked like from me to this camera right here. I mean, like right. And he's just grunting. He's like, man, man. I'll put that in the YouTube video. Yeah, he walked right up to me grunting, and there's actually 2 spikes in there, and they were like fighting and kind of sparring like 15 yards from me. It was super cool.
Or like just stabbing each other with the spikes.
Dude, that spike got so close to me, I was a little bit worried he was gonna like shank me for real. I mean, he was coming up. He got really close. And you know what's funny about that? I was telling Tiffany this the other day. I'm like, you don't realize how small deer actually are, especially down here in the South, man. That spike came walking up to me. I mean, he got like right up to me. I'm like, my gosh, dude, my dog is almost as big as you. I mean, they are very small. They stand like way shorter than you think.
Yeah.
When they're on, because when they're dead, laying over on the ground, you think that they're taller than they are, because just like their legs look long. But if you like stand next to a deer that is standing up, they're very short.
Oh yeah. Like I remember as a kid, I went to there was a lease hunting club that one of my other uncles was in, and he'd take us out there and go hunt every now and then. And the owner of the property that my uncle's buddy had leased the property from had like a little 10-acre little high fence there that he didn't have like true like high fence deer. He had like fawns. I don't know what the legality of this is, but he had like fawns they had caught and like put in there.
Yeah.
Or like, roadkill does and a fawn on the side of the road. They had a buck in there, and the buck was like a nice 10-point. He's probably like a 3.5-year-old deer. And I remember like walking up to the fence, and I'm like 12, and like I was still like so much taller than the deer. He like come up, and I'm like, "You are little, like dude, this is crazy, man." Like he's a good buck, but it's like crazy. Like you said, it's how short they are. Like you don't really notice it, except when you're on the ground, you kind of notice it. But then again, you really notice like when a big buck comes in, like a heavier buck. Like they do look so much bigger body size when you're like eye level with them. Like they're still short, but they look husky.
Yeah, they look big.
Kind of look like me, if I was on all fours.
So we need to talk about that the scrape thing.
Scrape thing.
The scrape thing from Arkansas.
Oh,
but we need to talk about your buck first, because we got a lot of ground to cover here. Let's talk about your hunt. So Alabama has a couple of zones that have different deer seasons based on where you're at. And I think there's two distinct zones that open. There's 3 distinct zones that open like muzzleloader. They open gun, muzzleloader, and bow season all earlier.
Yeah.
So this past week we had a muzzleloader hunt on one of these areas, and you went up for the muzzleloader hunt and struck pretty quick.
Yeah.
So let's get a rundown of it.
So we had a cold front come through. And this is
Halloween.
Yeah, it's Halloween, and it was like, it still is chilly because we're recording it a couple days after the fact. But it's pretty freaking chilly and like real high winds. And I decided to go to a parcel. So I was camping there with Michael Pike, and that morning I decided to go to a parcel that I was really kind of interested in diving into. That I had scouted previously. I'd seen like 13 deer on that parcel one morning hunt. And I'm like, man, there's got to be like a good buck there. Like I didn't see a lot of bucks on. I found like one little scrape and a couple little rubs there, but I was like, there's a big SMZ that runs from the public, kind of going towards this private property, and got thick cover on the private, get thick cover on the public, and this big SMZ that kind of goes down through there with a big thermal hub in it. And I'm like, dude, I'm gonna just like go down in there and get there like just after daylight, slip down in there, and just kind of scout my way through it. Because what I was trying to do, because I was planning on being up there hunting like Monday through Wednesday, and by scouting my way through, with the saddle and stuff on my backpack, but also with my muzzleloader, if I happen to run into a deer, great, but really just trying to find a spot to really come back and set up on. And I found a couple really good rubs down there, big rubs that were kind of running through that bottom. But ended up after I did like 3 miles in that parcel, and hiking back out. I was like, okay, I found like one good spot that I wanted to set up on. And actually, funny enough, as I was climbing, we had a lot of like misting rain that kind of got a little heavier throughout that day. So didn't have the camera equipment with me that morning because it was going to rain. So I was kind of climbing one of these trees over this thermal hub to try to figure out, how to hunt it. And we had talked about last week's breakdown episode, but like I don't really ever hunt thermal hubs a whole bunch, but I'm like, this one sets up so good. It's like real thick in the bottom.
Yeah.
You had thick ridge tops all the way around it, and like there's buck sign all down the bottom. But as I was climbing that tree just to test it and see how this, it looked when I got elevated, I kept smelling like tarsal gland, and the wind was swirling right there, and it's blowing back off the top of the ridge back behind me where these thin pines were. And I'm like, man, there's got to be a buck right there. So anyways, I only one stick high, so I got back down, grabbed my muzzleloader, threw my muzzleloader over my shoulder, kept climbing up, and I kept smelling it. I'm like, there's got to be a buck like right here, dude. And long story short, nothing ever showed, and I climbed back down, decided to, again, start a new trek because I was going to come back and hunt this tree, maybe not later that day, but the next morning, and started hiking back up the SMZ, the drainage back up to the truck. And as I'm walking back up, I made like 200 yards. I smelled it again, like real strong. And I walked up, and there's a scrape about as big as this table that had just been opened up. It's been raining and blowing really hard, like 24 mile an hour gust winds, and the leaves are falling everywhere. And there's not a leaf in this scrape, dude. And it had just been worked. And I'm like that sucker, and it was kicked out where the butt came off one side of the SMZ, dropped down, made the scrape, or opened the scrape up, and I didn't see that scrape because I walked by that spot like 3 hours before that. And anyways, he went up on the ridge I was sitting on the point of when I was climbing that tree. And I'm like, he must have got right below me. And when the wind was swirling, I could smell him when he was in that slut cut pines. But decided to bounce from there and went back to camp. I was talking with Michael Pike and our buddy Shane Parker, and kind of figuring out for the afternoon, because I told him like I'd walked that area pretty good, so I was going to try to bounce a different spot. And we were kind of talking about different stuff and stuff that Shane's seen, stuff that Michael had seen. And, all kind of elected, like, we're going to try to get down, like, lower in elevation in some of these spots. And a spot that came to mind was an area that I originally talked to Michael about, which is like a small little creek, kind of runs down off these ridges. And it just sets up real good. It looks like there's some thick cover down there. And Michael had told me previously that he had hunted it, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, and hunted it during like a gun hunt and seen some bucks down there. No real big deer, but just a bunch of deer chasing down the bottom. And we were talking about, I'm like, man, I'm like, if you don't want to go there, like, dude, I'll go down in there and like go scout because I've been interested about the spot anyways. He's like, yeah. And I had to find a way to get down that ridge just because it's real gnarly, kind of like just rocky and everything. And had a path of travel I was going to kind of go down, and elected to go there that afternoon. We all kind of split up, and I was going in with the mindset, like I've been carrying rattle antlers with me. I carried some in the morning with me, and I carried them with me that afternoon as well. Open day of muzzleloader season. And my thought process is, I've got one of those tethered fast packs, which is like a real small backpack. And I'm like, if I go down in here to the spot, like I'm talking like multiple miles from the truck, I want to make sure I can get out in one trip, like, because I'm gonna have the pack of deer if I do kill one. So I decided to switch out to the that first transfer pack, and put all my stuff in there. I didn't carry saddle or anything. I'm like, I'm just gonna go in there and hunt off the ground and just see if I can get into the spot. And it was crazy, dude. It was like still mist and rain, just like crappy weather, crazy high winds, just ripping and roaring. So I had all my gear packed up, decided to hike down. And as I'm going down the ridge, it's like there's like no deer sign on the tops. And as you start going down and getting in one of the drainages, it's like you start finding some big deer trails and you start finding a little more sign. And then it kind of like just petered out. And I get down there all the way to the creek, and it got pretty thick down there. And there's just like no deer sign. And Pike before
no tracks,
no trails, no droppings, no rubs, no scrapes, nothing. And you walk into it and you look at it, you're like, this, like I instantly think I'm about to jump a deer and or see some giant rubs down here, just like the way the habitat was. Yeah. And there was nothing. And I'm like, this is crazy, dude. And I talked to Pike previously because he'd been in that area like a year or so previously. And he was saying, like, yeah, dude, I had to find a bunch of big buck sign down there, just, big rubs, great scrapes, stuff like that. And I kind of worked my way through those areas and didn't find anything. And I'm like, this is insane, because I think there'd be sign down there. Of course, found some pig sign. And anyways, which is always a little eerie because there's some freaking big pigs. but ended up started bouncing spots because like I never felt confident in a lot of those areas. And like the crazy thing is when you get down the bottom, the wind's ripping up top and the wind's still blowing pretty good down in the bottom, but it's like so much calmer. Like you can hear better, like you can like, you know, you can see better because everything's not whipping around, but the wind was kind of kicked back. And I decided to bounce across the little creek, the little ditch, and go over to another big drainage that came off one of the ridge lines, and go get set up there. And I decided when I got set up, I'm like, I'm just again sit on the ground. I'm like, there is no sign here, like no tracks, no trails, no scrapes, no nothing, no rubs, anything. But this bottom looks real good. Had a lot of switch cane, like what you're talking about, kind of coming out to that bottom. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna sit here and see what see how it plays out. And it's like, it was maybe 4 o'clock when I finally got set up. And I sat there for like 30, 40 minutes, and I did some calling sequences, did some rattling, some grunting. And I'm like, dude, I just don't like this. Like, there's nothing here that gives me confidence. Like, it looks good, but there's nothing here of like, I was thinking like the ask why. Like, give me 3 reasons why to sit here.
Why should I be here?
And it's like.
Explain that real quick.
So this is something that Andrew brought up like 4 years ago on the podcast about like when he goes to the spot, he always asks himself, why should I sit here? And it's like typically you say 3 things, right?
Yep.
And you can't use wind as one of the examples.
Yes.
And
that's just my personal preference.
And it's like I got in there, I'm like, okay, the bottom, like this bottom looks good. Like it definitely looks like where a deer would like kind of drop off these ridges and go down through here. But like I haven't seen any sign up to the point. I hadn't dropped into that bottom. I just kind of came around the little ridge point.
Yep.
But I'm like, there's no sign. Like maybe a deer will come through, but there's no sign. Like I can't see anything. I haven't seen anything up to this point to tell me that there's deer coming through this area, at least bucks. And then other than it just looking good, like as a spot you'd catch a buck, I'm like, there's nothing here. So I decided to like pack my stuff up. As I'm packing my stuff up, I like catch a whiff of something, and I like look up, and I'm like, and I see this brown thing like shooting across right in front of me at 25 yards, and I'm like, oh crap! I'm like, it's a freaking deer, and it was a coyote. It had swung down, and the wind was swirling this spot, and I was wondering like, if a deer comes through, it's going to smell me. And this is where I'll kind of get to the conversation about like swirling winds.
Yeah.
Because
now, are you in a hub or is this just a bottom that you're crossing?
This is not really a hub. It's just like where a big drainage comes off one of the ridge lines down to like the small creek, and I'm just like kind of sitting over that other drainage.
So it's like a juncture of two
drainages. Yeah, 2 drainages come together. So not really a hub per se, like where you have multiple drainages. It's just like you had one big like one creek drainage, and you had another secondary little drainage that dropped off into
that
it.
hits it at a 90-degree angle.
Yeah.
And you would say a hub would be
multiple drainages, like at least two. I mean, I wouldn't call this a hub. It's not even a bowl. Like I would say at least 3 drainages kind of coming together, especially a little higher up in elevation where you have a couple different ridge points coming together.
Yeah.
Because this is like a very large area. Like nothing's tight. Like it's like 120 yards across this next little drainage I'm sitting on.
Yeah.
But anyways, this guy comes shooting by me, and like never knew I was there. Just kind of like trotting through.
Were you trying to shoot it?
No, but I was interested. I'm like, how the hell did it not smell me? Because my wind in this spot, as I'm dropping milkweed, it'd be like shooting up the ridge point at sometimes, and then it'd just be shooting down the ridge point, and it'd be shooting out toward in that bottom. It'd be like going everywhere. Yeah. But I'm like, a coyote's got such a good nose. Still not as good as a deer, but like has a very good nose. I'm like,
good enough to smell you.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like it would have smelled me, and I'm like, it's made me start thinking, and like with this swirling wind, that maybe like my scent's not carrying as far as I think it is. Like it's just it's going out there maybe 30, 40 yards, and it's kind of kicking back on itself.
Okay.
So I'm like, it was interesting. I'm like, okay, that's kind of a cool observation that like that coyote came through here, never knew I was there, and just kind of kept going down the creek, kept going down the drainage towards the creek. So I decided to pack my stuff to go down through that ditch to where that switch cane is, and I'm like, let me see if I can cut any sign down there. Go down there, no tracks, no trails, no rubs, no scrapes, nothing. Which, I mean, it looks like the spot you'd find a huge scrape and some big rubs. Yeah. Like, you look at it, like 100%, there's going to be sign. Nothing. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep working farther from the truck. I'm already at this point, I'm almost 2.5 miles in at this point. I'm like 2.25 or something like that at this point. I'm just going to keep work further from the truck and kind of work back down towards the creek, back up the drainage a little bit, and just see if I can slip into anything. And at this point, I'm just looking for sign. Like, if I see a deer, great, but I just need confirmation there's a buck here, okay? And I keep going, and I'm like, dude, it looks so good. Like, thicker, just it looks like you'd find rubs and scrapes. And I found one spot, I'm like, man, these looks like some scrapes underneath this big beech tree. And it started carrying out. I'm like, no, this is turkey scratching. and there's like turkey scratching everywhere in this one little
Oh,
spot.
man.
And I'm like, well, okay, that's not great. Again,
So
still
disappointing walk so far.
100%. I'm like, I'm not seeing anything, dude. And I'm far from the truck.
Questioning your skills as a deer hunter at this point.
Questioning my skills off a map, reading maps, because everything about the map tells you like this would be a money spot. Like a bunch of different habitat edges kind of coming together, look fairly thick in the bottom, stick on the ridge tops. Just it looks like a spot you'd have a lot of deer moving through.
Yeah.
Ended up kept slipping up. And I'm like, man, I'm going to cross the creek and go back onto the other side of the creek that I originally came from, but a lot further up. And there's another drainage that comes off one of the side of these little ridges. And I'm like, I'm just going to work up to that point and just see if I can find any sign there. And the second I cross the creek, there's a little logging road right there, and I find a scrape. Okay, and it's just nothing impressive. It's a little bit bigger than a basketball. Hadn't been worked in probably like that day because the leaves had been kind of filled up in it, but there's some tracks in it. And I'm like, okay, there's something here at some point. Okay,
Deer exists.
There exists, and I kind of work up into that little. You almost could call it like a little bowl, just where this drainage kind of comes out and kind of flattens out right there before it drops down to the creek. And again, not really a thermal hub, just like a little flat area where it drops off the side of this ridge line. And I set up, I'm like, dude, I've got 20 minutes left before dark. Like, I don't have much time because I've been walking for most of it. And I'm like, I'm going to set up, I'm going to call and to see what happens. Set up against a huge beech tree, sit down there, do a very loud and aggressive rattling sequence just because it was so windy. It's like, if the thing's not within 100 yards of me, they're not going to hear me, is my thought process.
Oh, okay.
So I go to smash some antlers and
like trying to just break the antlers.
I mean, not necessarily break him because I was using your rattling antlers, and you can hurt yourself on your rattling antlers because one of the sheds has a brow tine that is curled in a certain way that you could stab your hand in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I need to saw that thing off.
I was rattling as loud as as hard as I could without hurting myself.
Okay.
And kind of going towards like a Clifton Denny rattling approach because that's how Clifton rattles.
Yeah.
To the point like you almost can smell like the antlers smoking a little bit. Like you smell like burned antlers, and that actually happened when you're grinding them together. And I stopped.
So when you're rattling, are you like
no, not like smashing, but like
you say that on the freaking Outdoor Channel all the time. They're just like pop.
You don't have you got a couple.
Look
sheds.
here, yeah, look right there, two giant. Yeah, grab that one.
There's one shed. Can you reach the other one?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
So, and this is a really bad one too. So like the brow tines like this is how you hurt yourself, people. If you're watching the video podcast, brow tines like this will impale you.
They're not great.
No, but this is gonna hurt, dude.
Look, just hurt yourself. Come on.
So like when
do it for the
so
listeners.
like when you hear like guys like our most popular calling episode was with Richard Fott. I think it's episode like 290 or something like that. It's like calling deer the right way. Richard Fott. He talks about like tickling antlers where he'll like put them together and he's like does a lot of this stuff and like grinding.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do it the way I did it.
Dude, quit being a sissy. Just do it.
The way I did it, it's like you're popping them, and you're like, I can't do it.
Dude, you almost just stabbed yourself in the eye.
I almost stabbed myself in the freaking wrist. But, like, I can't do it with these. There's no way the brow tines are too big. It's a problem to have. It's a good problem to have. But, like, you're popping them a lot more, and, like, you're grinding, and you're making, like, that snap and pop like that.
Oh, okay. Y'all should watch on YouTube so you can kind of see what he's doing.
But this is a very bad example.
It's on the wrist.
These brow tines are like way too tall.
Man, I'd love to kill that deer. That's two different deer, but golly.
God, I wish that was his other side. That'd be a sweet deer like that. But anyways, but yeah, you need to cut your brow tines off. But anyways, like it's just a lot more like snapping and popping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do it with it. Anyways, long story short, so I do that sequence. And it's not 5 minutes later. I put the antlers down. I'm sitting against this tree. It's overcast. So it's getting dark quick. And again, I maybe have 15 minutes of light. And I hear like, and
how long did you rattle for?
Maybe like a minute, probably.
Okay.
Something like that.
Did you throw some grunts in?
No, I don't
Were
think
you breaking stuff?
No. It was so loud because the leaves are blowing so loud. I'm like, I don't think you could have been snapping unless you snapped like a big branch. Like they're not going to hear any of that.
Oh, so they're just straight up rattling.
Yeah, just straight rattling.
Gotcha.
And like 5 minutes later, I hear something and I look up and I see this buck coming right towards me off the side of the ridge. And I'm like, I see him for a second. He turns broadside. I'm like, man, that's a pretty good deer. And my first, kind of like Scott Seals says.
Were you like, holy crap, it worked?
Yeah, but what Scott Seals says is like the old, the buck.
Oh, you son,
and,
you son of a gun. Now I got to go find that cuss word and bleep it.
And when he first came out, I saw him broadside, and I'm like, oh man, it's a good deer. But like, I didn't think about pulling my gun up, pulling the muzzler up. So I threw my binos up, and I was looking at him, and he walks right up to a beech tree, and he starts thrashing the limbs, and I mean, just starts going to town. These limbs, starts pawing out a scrape, which I found it wasn't an existing scrape. He just wanted to make his own scrape right there. Starts pawing it out, thrashing the tree above it, and I see him. I'm like, man, that's a pretty good deer. And then all of a sudden he turns, starts walking towards me. And then I saw his brow tines and how wide he was in his main beams. I'm like, oh, that's a good deer. Like, okay, well, put the binos down, get the gun up, okay?
Yep.
Kind of one of those situations. And dude, right when he like stops like thrashing that tree and making that scrape, starts walking right towards me. I mean, he's 40 yards from me. At this point, he's 35 yards walking towards me. That wind swirls and hits me in the back of the head, okay? And I'm thinking, I'm like, and at this point, right when he turns is when I still had the binos up because I was still looking at him, and I was like, "Oh, I need to shoot that deer." And that wind hits me in the back of the head. I'm like, I might not be able to shoot this deer because he's about to smell me. And he stopped, and he kind of like looked around a little bit, and he just kept walking right towards me. And I'm like, I couldn't drop milkweed at the time, but it made me think. I'm like, did that wind just not get to that deer? Like, because I'm sitting on a huge beech tree. I mean, the tree's this big around. I mean, it's one of those trees you need like a 10 or 12 foot rope to go around that tree.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it went and just like eddied around the tree and it only went out, 10, 15 yards and kind of swirled back. But anyways, somehow my scent didn't get to that deer in that swirling condition. And he kept walking out. I was able to put the binos down, grab the gun, pull it up, quarter two shot, held right in front of the shoulder with the muzzleloader. And again, I love hunting with the muzzleloader, guys. I freaking love it. One shot, one kill. Okay. The great thing about muzzleloader, if you miss, good luck trying to reload on it because it ain't gonna happen more than likely unless that deer just does not know what's going on. But shot, freaking put it right in front of his shoulder, and anyways, broke his shoulder, broke that onside leg, and just obliterated him. And he stumbled maybe 4 or 5 yards forward and just went straight down. And I was like, awesome. At that point, I'm thinking when he goes down, I'm like, I am very far back in here. Because, like, up until that point, I've walked almost 3 miles. At that point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way I'm going back the same way I came in. Like, there's just no way. Like, I'm not going that way. Yeah, I knew there's another way. When I shot him, I'm like, there's another way I can get back up that's right in front of me. Like, actually, the way that buck came down off that ridge, I can walk up that ridge and go up through a spot up there to get back up to the road.
Yeah.
But for me to get there, it's still like a mile back to the truck. So, like, once I get up to the road, I still have a mile back to the truck to go. And I'm like, oh, dude. But anyways, I go up and I see him. I'm like, oh, this great deer. It's an awesome deer. And looking at him, I think he's probably a 3-year-old. Because I'd seen a really nice 2.5-year-old buck during bow season up there. And just like looking at his body, this deer is probably 160 pounds, probably live weight. Had more fat on him than any Alabama buck I've ever seen. He had fat from his neck and brisket down his shoulders. Like, his whole body was encased with fat, like a 1/4 inch to like 1/2 inch fat.
Wow.
And especially as you got towards his hindquarters, like, I was peeling off fat like almost 1 inch thick.
Wow.
And it went all the way down his hindquarters. I mean, the thing was covered in
Dude's
fat.
been stocking up.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, dude, like, he's been pounding some acorns this fall. But, dude, stank, just nasty tarsal glands.
Big old swollen neck.
Oh, yeah,
swelled up.
And I was like, this is awesome. And, at that point, I realized I had some work because it was getting dark, took some photos, and instantly started working on, doing a gutless method, which we just did a video on, which should come out here pretty soon, of how to do a gutless method for packing out a deer.
Yep.
And did that, was able, which I'm pretty proud of myself, was able to get them completely quartered up, bagged, and was hiking out within an hour of getting to the deer.
That's good.
Which is good because typically it takes me
really good.
quite a while.
Especially for Jacob.
Yeah, because I'm pretty slow anyways. But I was like, dude, I gotta get through this thing and get all the meat off and everything. But using that transfer pack, I think we packed out one other deer with the transfer packs last year on one of our hunts where we killed 3 bucks. But I wasn't using the transfer pack. I think Thomas was using it.
Yeah, Thomas was.
But it carried surprisingly well. I was able. So typically, guys, what I do when I'm hunting, I'll carry game bags with me. Some like caribou game bags, and then I carry. We've got a bank down here in the south. I mean, it's all over the country, but called Regions. And one of my uncles used to work for Regions, and he got like hundreds, if not maybe 1,000, of these like big plastic, almost like contractor bags that has a Regions logo on it, and it has like a sticky tape across the top where you can like seal it shut.
What are those things even for?
I have no clue.
Big old money bags?
I have no clue.
I mean, I don't know.
But he's got like a whole room full of them. Okay, so like I've got a bunch
Those
of them.
things are awesome.
But like typically, if I don't have those bags, I'll keep like a big heavy, like 3 mil contractor bags with me. And what I do is I put my game bags in a big 1 gallon Ziploc bag, press all the air out. It goes in the bottom of the pack, and then I put the contractor bag or one of these big Regions bags down in there. And what I use the contractor bag for is, so once I get everything in the game bags, all the meat in the game bags, because I don't want to get a whole bunch of just blood on my backpack, because it's not hard to clean, but it's just like pain to clean blood out of any kind of backpack using like hydroperoxide, spraying it with water, Dawn, dish soap, and letting it air dry. But I'll put the game bags in one of these bigger plastic bags that slide inside the backpack or on the meat shelf. Now, on the transfer bag, I guess it technically has kind of a meat shelf. You can separate the bag from the frame and strap stuff to it, but I didn't do that. I actually put all the game bags inside that big plastic bag down in the bottom of the backpack, and then put all my clothes and all my other gear on top of it. And I had that sucker strapped down to the max. It did not have another square inch of space left in it. And I was able to, get out with that deer. But hiking back out, I mean, straight uphill, I think it was almost 0.8 miles, almost 0.9 miles back to the road, kind of getting up and out of that spot. And it was gnarly, dude. But I'm not going to lie, it was 10 times better than dragging a deer.
Oh, 100%.
And also, where I was at, I had 0 cell service, so I couldn't call or text anybody to let them know I shot something. So I'm like, unless I walk all the way up, and I had to walk all the way back to the truck to get some cell service. I had some cell service at the truck. That's the only way I could let somebody know. And I'm like, I'm just dealing with this by myself. I'm not hiking out of here to let everybody know and go get some help to come back in here and have to quarter back it out. I'm just going to do it all in one trip. And it worked out really, really well. But that pack did great. I was surprised how well that pack did getting everything out. But was able to get back to the truck and made it back by like, I don't know, maybe 8 o'clock. I think it was 8 o'clock on the dot. And right when I get back, I start driving out, and Michael calls me. He's like, man, are you good? Because it's like 2 hours after dark now by the time I'm driving out. He's like, are you good? I'm like, yeah, dude, it just took me a while to get out of the woods. I was trying to text everybody like a photo of the deer and everything. Like, hey, it took me a while to get back to the truck to have the deer. And he never got it. And he's like, you good? I'm like, yeah. I'm just not even going to tell him until I show up at camp. And I'm like, yeah, dude. I'm like, yeah, it just took me forever. Kind of got lost, but I'm, back to the truck. I'm driving back now. And he's like, all right. But, he didn't think anything about it, because typically I take a long time to get out of the woods anyway.
Yeah, this is nothing unusual at all. It's like Jacob shows up 3 hours after dark.
Yeah. So, like, it's like when we were hunting your hunting club, and, like, y'all were back at the checkout board.
We're ready to go get some Mexican
when I
food.
was, like, packing my stuff up at the base of the tree.
Yeah.
And anyway,
it was ridiculous.
But I get back, and he's like, man, dude, you good? I'm like, yeah, dude. I'm like, it was tiring getting out of that spot. I'm like, hey, I need your help. I'm trying to grab some stuff out of the back of the truck. I need to like unload some stuff. Open the back of the truck, and like open the back of the truck. I'm like, hey, help me grab this real quick. And the buck's on my backpack. He like looked at it for a second. He's like, and he like looked at me. He like looked back at the deer. And he's like, you killed it? And I'm like, no, I found that deer on the side of the road and packed him out. Like, yeah, I killed the deer. And he's like, holy crap, man, that's awesome.
Oh,
dude.
that's so good.
But yeah, it was awesome. But like, yeah, dude, because cell service is so bad. I couldn't text anybody until we dropped back, went back to town, and had to go grab some dinner and everything and get all that taken care of. But it was a cool experience. But again, rattle that deer but it was cool kind of seeing, again, like how fast he responded, which told me, like I think I told you, I told Pike this, like that deer had to be within 100, 150 yards of me to hear that, I think.
Yeah.
Just because of how loud everything was. And he just was aggressive enough to come into that spot and come check it out. And he was definitely like, second I saw him, he started thrashing that tree, making that scraping, came on a beeline right towards me. So
that's awesome.
It was a really, really cool experience. And it made me kind of think like how to implement. I now look at calling slightly different. Because I always thought calling in the past, like we've talked about calling in the past, and like, I've had some success with it, but it's also like I'm so cautious about doing any kind of calling.
Yeah.
But like calling, I feel like is one of the things you can do to actually make something happen instead of hoping something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's where calling kind of comes into a factor. It's like by calling, you're able to hopefully try to make something happen and instead of hoping something's going to happen. So it gave me a lot more confidence to call now. So I don't know. We're probably going to try it out a little bit more this season, and rattle, grunt, snort, wheeze, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And just kind of see how it plays out. But it was a really cool experience. And again, packing that deer out was let me tell you this. Every time you pack it, now I've packed out quite a few deer now. Every time you pack one out, especially like a buck specifically, And it's always like, man, this might be the heaviest pack out I've ever done. It's like
it's always the heaviest.
It's always the heavy. It always feels like, man, this is the heaviest pack I've ever done, and it wasn't. I think that thing, because I had a lot of gear with me, clothes and stuff, and I was probably walking to woods with like probably 18 pounds of gear.
Yeah.
And then with all the meat and everything, the head and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I was probably around 80, 85 pounds coming out. But that's still not as heavy as like the black bear pack out was by far one of the heaviest pack out, and our mule deer. But when we killed our mule deer, because we had to pack out 2 mule deer at once, I was in a lot better shape though. Like that's back when I was a gym rat and I was in like 10 times better shape. But yeah, hiking out with that sucker, I'm like, dude, I'm just praying. I'm like, you know, I don't want to tear an ACL or any kind of ligaments in my knee and everything. Like, slow and steady as we're going up. You know, don't take any big steps where you slip and twist something. Just be careful because, again, it's one of those spots that, like, you know, if you broke a leg or something back in there,
yeah, you're going to have some trouble.
You're sleeping there for the night.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, unless you can crawl back up. And, again, like it was a mile. It was 1.8, almost 1.9 miles to the truck. It took me an hour to get back, packing them out. But it was one of those things that, like, it was so gratifying to do that, which kind of goes back to, like, you talking about, like, hunting some of these different areas and, like, having, like, the adventure of, like, going in real deep and trying to kill a buck and get them out.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, a gratification of doing something like that versus, like, you know, killing one a couple hundred yards from the truck, which I have no issue. Like, I'll kill a big deer, whether
I don't care where he's at.
2 miles back or if he's 150 yards off the road. It don't matter to me, but there's definitely something special about killing one pretty far back and packing him back out.
Yeah, I love that, man. Like our mountain hunt last year, that's kind of how those were. Those were both really far from the truck, and it's just an adventure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's truly an adventure that you look back on, and it's just something like super fun. So I highly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah.
Man, that's really awesome about the rattling thing. I feel like it's all about timing with that. That's something that Pike was saying, is that, like, it just goes to show that rattling is all about timing, because you've rattled for years, and this is the first buck you've actually killed rattling.
Yeah, and I think it's always because I've done it too close to the rut, and the problem is a lot of places that we hunt, there's so many does that, like, bucks, I don't think they have to compete overly hard when, like, majority of the does are in heat.
Yeah.
And that's when you hear a lot of guys not having success. You're doing a lot of rattling. It's like you're in the Midwest, and it's a lot more balanced buck to doe ratio. But I feel like if you do it early enough, especially, like, you could potentially have more success, like, kind of earlier in the pre-rut, because, like, you know, you've scouted this area, you found fighting tracks where bucks were sparring 3 weeks ago in an area. And then, you know, Shane's seen the same thing, Pike's seen the same thing, and it's like, I feel like if you do it early enough, maybe you'll have more success, you know, with the, like, specifically rattling. I think grunting can work at a lot of different times, but, like, specifically rattling, doing it a little bit earlier than you thought. So, like, you know, say, like, if you're the area of, say, you hunt, say, ruts the first week of January, you know, start rattling the end of November, that first week of December, and try to do some calling.
Yeah.
And see if you can kind of, you know, draw something in and get something's attention.
Yeah. I think I've only killed one deer rattling that I can remember, and I killed him like 16 days pre what I would consider peak of the rut is when I rattled that deer in. And so it's probably about the same for this deer that you just killed. When you
Probably.
probably. I mean, probably like roughly like a good distance away from like peak rut. You're still in like early pre-rut kind of stuff. And so that's like the time when they're like fighting it out, you know. And I've had it one time. I actually, in the same area that I rattled that buck in and killed him, I had the only time I've ever witnessed like a true knockdown drag out buck fight.
Wait, did you kill that buck in public?
No.
Oh, okay.
That was on our old hunting club.
Okay. Did you have one of the knockdown drag out fights on public over there on a specific parcel? It sounded like, because I remember it's like the year you and me started hunting, and I don't want to give out too many details, but there was a certain gate you'd always hunt behind, and getting back there next to like a beaver pond or something, and hearing some bucks going at it on one ridge line.
No, that wasn't on that ridge line. That was on, I think you're thinking of one that was on that same club. And I saw like 19 deer that morning, and yeah, two of the bucks. One of the bucks I should have shot. Hey man, I wish I still had the trail cam pictures of this deer. He was like a 4-point or something. Oh wait, no, that's a different deer. This deer, he had like a 5-point side and like a big giant fork on the other side, but it only forked at the end. It was like a big club, like huge, like heavy mass, and we named him Fubar. And we wanted to kill Fubar. He was a cool looking buck.
And you pass Fubar.
Well, so Fubar came walking up. I love that name. I need to name another deer that. He came walking up the ridge, and his bad side was facing me. And I thought I didn't recognize him at first. And he turned at the last second, and I saw what deer he was, and I tried to get up on him, and it was too late. And another deer came up, and he was I can't remember which deer he was because we had most of these deer on camera, but another good deer, and I just couldn't get a shot on him. And they ended up getting together and just fighting. And I was genuinely shocked at how like violent and loud it was.
Yep.
Like literally shocked. It would be like, it sounded like two guys with baseball bats trying to kill each other. I mean, it was so loud, and I'm like, wow, like I'm not rattling hard enough, you know? Like, you got to be violent with it, you know? And so that's what they did. But that is a different year, but same time period. It was like 15 plus days before peak of the rut, and that's when they're just like going at it, you know, going crazy. So anyways, all about timing.
Yeah, I've got some other places in mind that I'm going to definitely implement some rattling.
You going to rattle in Arkansas? Or do you think it's too late?
I mean, it'd be worth taking them. I think right now, like this timing of the, like, you know, a week before we get there would probably be like peak time for rattling. Really, I wasn't even, you know, kind of transitioned to Arkansas when we went up there and scouted. I never even like carried my muzzler with me. It was muzzler season. I didn't even carry it with me. Thomas has had his and is out there just, you know, scouting and running trail cameras and all that kind of stuff, which, you know, luckily I didn't run into any bucks, like, thankfully, because I was telling Thomas that this would be the time when 160 pops out at 35 yards. He just, like, looks at me.
He's like, what are y'all
and then
doing?
just, like, just puts his tail up and starts, like, kind of walking off, trotting off. But thankfully that didn't happen. But we did bump some deer. I think I bumped 2 different bucks in 2 different spots that were bedded up. But, again, it was so thick, like, you couldn't get a shot even if you wanted to. Even though I bumped one, I swear it ran right by Thomas, and he's like, I never even saw it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know it was really windy, but if you were looking anywhere out in this opening, you should have saw that deer come flying out of here.
Old Thomas, man.
Yeah.
All right, so Arkansas, update on Arkansas. You put out a whole bunch of cameras, but 6 of them were cell cameras. We got 3 different brands represented. We got Covert, Bushnell, and Tacticam. One of each is not working. So across the board, one of each is not working.
I think
it could be bad cell signal.
Well, actually, one of them's working. The Covert, that was the first camera we put out, it's in a spot that I thought was a lot better than what it really was. Because we've had some deer
just misjudged.
Yeah, there's not much activity going on, but like we've had, I think, a doe on that camera. So it's working. It's just nothing's really coming by that camera, I think.
Okay, gotcha.
But one of the Bushnells, I think it just must have lost signal. It was sending us photos fine, and I can't believe for like 10, 12 days it hasn't sent us another image because there's so much sign right there.
Yeah.
So that one's kind of offline. And then one of the Tacticams, which is in another really good spot on a really good scrape line, sent us photos when we were in front of the camera, and then
Hasn't sent us anything since.
no test photos, nothing since
Yeah,
then.
and we got the check-in picture turned on, and it's not sending us check-in pictures.
Yep,
So
so-
it's definitely something's up with that camera. But the other ones, they're all on scrapes, and we've been getting. I wanted to just briefly talk about this
Yeah.
because it's something that I've used in the last couple years successfully, specifically successfully last year on our mountain hunt, but even before that, and that is finding the right kinds of scrapes to put your cameras on and using it as an indicator of what kind of rut activity is going on. And this exact same thing played out last year on our mountain hunt, and that is the scrapes. They'd get some activity, maybe some bucks are coming by. You might get like some good bucks coming by randomly, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of does using it. And there's like a flurry of activity around that camera, specifically where does are coming up. They're working the licking branch, they're peeing in the scrape, does are using it, and you get like nothing but does on camera for a couple days, and then bam, like the bucks start showing up. You get like 3 or 4 bucks using that same scrape. And that happened last year on our mountain hunt, and we ended up killing a couple bucks, based off that information. Just really using that information to say, hey, there's probably a hot doe in this area, or they're probably using this, they're probably chasing in this area. Another good indicator is your camera's on a scrape and it's getting all kinds of activity, like getting hammered by activity, and then it goes dead. That to me is an indicator that they're probably not scraping because they're chasing or they're doing something else. You know, like there's a hot doe and they're actually either locked down with that doe or seeking her out or chasing her or whatever. And what we're seeing in Arkansas right now is pretty much that. Like we had a flurry of does as soon as this cold front rolled through, this Halloween cold front that we got. We had all kinds of does on a couple of these cameras, and now, bam, the bucks are coming through, including the first mature buck that we've gotten on camera.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
He's a pretty nice deer.
Yeah, pretty nice deer. Nothing crazy special, but definitely he comes out.
He's getting popped.
He's getting shot,
Yeah.
for sure. And, you know, that's one thing that's kind of interesting because we found a lot of good sign while we were up there. Like the sign, which based off when I was there last year, we were there probably like 6 days later than when I was there last year.
Yep.
And it was like completely different. There's way more rubs, way more scrape. I mean, there was no rubs last year, no scrapes I found. I think I covered like 18 miles in like 5 days up there hunting or scouting, and didn't find any fresh rubs, any fresh scrapes, nothing. And a lot of those areas are the same areas that we went into this time. So the sign's a lot more, I guess, readily available, and it seems maybe a touch earlier, but just a ton of big rubs, ton of big scrapes, and a couple of the scrapes that we've had, I guess, the most activity on, at least on the cell cameras. One of them in particular is right next to. There's like a couple different thickets that all kind of come together in one area, and they all kind of point towards each other. So like you got like one thicket to like the northwest, you got one thicket to the south. Or one thicket to the northeast, one thicket to the southwest, and another thicket to the southeast. So it's like three thickets all come together in this one spot. And we found when I walked into that area, which I'd been wanting to go to for a while now, there was rubs going through that spot along with a really nice scrape underneath a big cedar. And I was like, man, this looks like a fantastic spot in order to kind of catch a deer, you know, kind of cruising through. So, you know, elected to put up a camera there, and that's where we've had by far the most sign, at least out of the active working cell cameras. And, you know, like you said, you know, bucks of all different ages coming through there, a bunch of does, different times of the day, both morning, midday, afternoon, evening, like a bunch of different times they're coming through.
Yep.
Which is really, really exciting. But hopefully it kind of all pans out pretty well. I'm very eager to see, because we put out 6 cell cameras, and I think it's 7 or 8 non-cellular cameras in other spots. Mm-hmm. And looking back at it, there's a couple of spots that we put the non-cellular cameras out that I really wanted a cell camera, and I'm an idiot with putting cell cameras out. And like, I called you at one point, and I was like, man, I can't get these things to work. Like, you know, how do you do test photo, blah, 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 because I've never put any cell cameras out. It's always been you doing it. And I didn't realize at the time, but I had tried a Bushnell and a Reveal, and I didn't think I was getting them working, and they were sending photos to us then, but I wasn't getting notification because I didn't have like the greatest cell signal. And anyway, so I elected to put. We had a couple. We had some Tasco cameras, some Browning Strike Force non-cellular cameras, and then a couple Wild Game Innovations. And anyways, I elected to put one of these other non-cellular cameras in those areas. But I'm very excited to see what those cameras provide, because it's like you'd walk through some of these spots. And you get into like just a ton of sign. Like the way I describe it is complete opposite of like where I just shot this buck at.
Yeah.
You couldn't step foot on a lot of this place without seeing tracks everywhere. Like big tracks. Like, dude, there were some tracks that we found that were like as big or bigger than your hand walking through some of these spots in like these thickets, and which would be hard to hunt. But I think you kind of maybe get into the center of them, kind of get around the edge of them, and do pretty good. But I've got some cameras kind of scattered out throughout some of those thickets and some more like the more open woods closer to some of the thickets. But it's like you just like pop through one of these spots and you find 3 or 4 really good scrapes, and then you'd find a bunch of huge rubs, rubs on 7-8 inch diameter trees, and just tore up signs. So I'm like, I know there's got to be some good deer in here, and not like some of the younger bucks we got on camera. It's just a matter of time of figuring out what scrapes they're actually using, because I'm hoping that some of the other scrapes that we put some of these non-cellular cameras on have some of those mature bucks actually using a lot more right now.
Yeah, definitely. We got to work on your trail camera placement. I got to tell you, it's not great. Look, I start getting freaking pictures rolling into these cell camera apps, and like there's just a tree right in front of the scrape, like between the camera and the scrape, there's a whole other tree.
It's not
And
a
I'm
big
just
tree.
like, what are you doing?
It's like, it's like
No, it's a big tree. It's
That's-
like this big around. It's got limbs all over it. So at night, the infrared flash is hitting that thing, and you can't see nothing behind it. It's just like a white tree with blackness behind it and two eyes back there.
some of the photos are like that.
Ah, dude, I'm telling you. So we need. Maybe you should just go hang out with Shane for a while and let him show you how he puts cameras out.
Yeah, well, my thought process on a lot of that, because we were hanging a lot of the trail cameras up using climbing sticks, because there's a decent amount of hunters, and I didn't want to have anybody steal a camera. But also, it's like not getting it so close to the scrape, because my thought process was, I'll tell you what, I'm about as bad about picking a tree for a camera as I am about picking a tree to climb to hunt.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm standing there like, Thomas, like, hurry up, pick a tree, and let's go.
He's slow with everything.
Yeah, so
Slow as Christmas.
but yeah, my thought process, because I remember we interviewed, I think it was Greg Skufka talking about how he likes, I think it was Greg, or maybe it might have been Troy Pottinger, one of these guys talking about like putting the camera not on like, especially on a scrape, not putting it on the like one of the first trees next to the scrape, but putting it one tree further back so like the deer aren't like directly looking at your camera.
Yeah.
But
Putting it at an angle.
But funny enough, that freaking mature buck,
Oh, he freaking nailed
dude,
that thing.
that camera's 8 foot up a tree, 2 trees off from the scrape. It's probably 15 yards from the scrape, and I guess it's glowing red. That Tacticam reveal is, and he is stomping. He's the only
staring
like,
at
I don't know if any of the other deer, because we haven't pulled some. I looked at a bunch of any of the other videos, but he like works the scrape, looks up, and he just starts stomping on the video, looking at the scrape.
That
and
he's
I'm like,
as from the videos I've seen, because I request a lot of videos from there. He's the only one I've seen notice the camera so far.
Yeah.
Go figure. Big old mature buck. Big. I mean, his body is like significantly larger than any other deer, even the bucks we got on camera.
yeah, he's a toad.
And he's got pretty good mass. He's probably 16, 17 inches wide, but he's got one of his main beams goes out, and I don't think it has any tines on it. He's got a brow tine, but I don't think he's got any like a G2 or G3
Big
or
old,
anything.
big old spike.
Yeah, big old spike side. But his
Nine-
other side's like a 4-point side.
Yeah, it's like a 19-inch spike coming off
Yeah.
the side, just friggin' hanging around.
I mean, I'll shoot him. I won't think twice about it.
yeah.
So, anyways, all right, we got to get to these questions. Jacob, tell them where they can get the
Q&As.
Q&As.
So again, like I say, every single week, guys, we greatly appreciate you guys submitting the Q&As, listener Q&As on the website. Of course, you can go down the show notes on the audio podcast or on the video side of the podcast. And there's a show note down there talking about a link for the listener Q&As. You can submit your questions, and again, we can answer those on these outro breakdown episodes. So appreciate everybody been doing them. It's definitely been one of my favorite parts of the segment of the podcast that we do every single week.
Oh, yeah, it's my favorite. So, all right, this is from Tommy Kelly coming out with some controversy. Hey, guys, love the podcast. I have a bit of a controversial question for you guys. I've been attempting to deer hunt for the first time for about 4 years now and have not gone a single time yet. Reason being, I've been trying to archery hunt. Problem is learning to hunt and learning to shoot, as well as work on the bow. And he says, because I'm left-handed and I can't find a shop near me that can do anything but put a brand new string on the bow. It has been overwhelming, and I've not ever been able to get the confidence to actually go hunting. In this instance, would you get a crossbow? Would getting a crossbow be worthwhile just to learn the hunting side before I jump into a bow, or do you guys think waiting for rifle season would be better? I know crossbows are a bit controversial in the archery world, but in the spirit of extending my season as long as possible, I figure it might be the best way to get the most experience. I'm very interested to get your guys' opinion on this. Thanks. All right, Jacob, take it away.
I don't care at all if you use a crossbow or not. I really don't care. I don't care if you use a traditional bow, compound, crossbow, whatever you want to shoot, go about doing it. I've talked about this. I'm almost about to buy a crossbow just to hunt with it, just because I know it'll piss some people off because, I'm an able-bodied person using a crossbow. Haven't done it quite yet, but I'm very tempted to do so.
Just want to stir the pot, huh?
Just for the hell of it. So this is one unfortunate thing about, bow hunting is if you don't, like, I look at like John Dudley on his YouTube channel. He's got a ton of tutorial videos on how to like work on your bow and all that kind of stuff. And unless you feel confident doing that, if you don't have like a quality archery shops, relatively close to you that can actually not only help you work on your bow and do a lot of, kind of either teach you how to do it or actually let them do it, and also having someone that can be a mentor to teach you how to shoot and shoot properly and have confidence with what you're doing, it's really hard for people. And thankfully, we live in an area where we have Mark's Outdoors, not terribly far from us. And both Mark Smith and Robbie Yates works on our bows, and they're awesome dudes.
Yeah.
Highly recommend them. They're hilarious to go talk to. But if you don't have something like that as a resource for you, I can see how you can kind of feel like you're left out a little bit on, having somebody kind of help coach you, especially if you don't have like an actual hunting mentor who does a lot of bow hunting, who maybe works on their bows, that can kind of help coach you along getting through the different stages. So my thing is, if getting a crossbow would help you feel more confident getting out in the woods and start experiencing, hunting, especially it seems like you're a newer deer hunter. You've only been hunting for about 4 years now. I'd say do it, but the thing is, even with a crossbow, there's certain things you have to do to that bow. It's a lot of crossbows. If you buy a crossbow, like maybe your bow shop can get it set up for you, but they don't necessarily they don't come together. Like you still have to put them together and everything, and understand you have to wax your rails and everything in order for it to not blow up.
Most of them come together.
I was talking to Robbie and them. He's like, a lot of their crossbows, you come together, like different parts you got to kind of put together for you.
Like what?
Like
the scope?
Yeah, well, some of them aren't even strung. He says some of the crossbows you buy, they're not even strung, so you got to get someplace to string it for you.
Oh, wow, that's weird.
Yeah, so...
you could just go buy one off the shelf that's already strung.
That's true, too. But anyway, there's still some factors there. So even if you get a crossbow, it's not like necessarily you just go out and shoot the thing, make sure it's sighted in. There's like some different maintenance aspects that you need to do for it. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've been seeing a lot of people on social media talking about blown up crossbows this year. It's like every day on one of the Facebook groups I'm in, hunting groups, someone's talking about like a blown up crossbow. Like Ben from Mark's Outdoors, he's an older gentleman, works in the ammo and gun department. His crossbow blew up on him this year.
Wow.
And he's like, he was just sitting in the shooting house with me, and all of a sudden I hear this ka-doom, and I'm like, I thought it was a bird trying to fly into the window to get into the into the blind.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like one of the limbs was like hanging off, and it was still cocked and everything, and it's all sketchy. But
nice.
Again, if hunting with a crossbow would make you feel more confident, try it. Go about doing it. But I'd also highly recommend doing a little more research and trying to find whether it's a bow shop or a private individual in your region to kind of help you work on a bow and help you get comfortable shooting it. Because I'll say this, when you shoot a deer with like a compound bow, it is so rewarding. It really is. There's like a connection you have with like the whole aspect of drawing back and like just the hassle of everything.
Yeah.
That makes it extremely rewarding. That I don't necessarily think you really get with the compound. But again, just kind of repeating myself, if you think it make you more confident, go about doing it. But what I would recommend is get on Facebook. If you're on social media, get on Facebook, make a post, and I would try to find somebody who maybe shoots, whether it's ASA tournaments or some kind of tournament archer that maybe works on bows that maybe doesn't have a bow shop, but you could pay them to kind of help work on your bow and also maybe help them. It'd be worth paying them a couple $100 or $100 to sit down with them on a Saturday or a Friday and show them like, hey, how do I go about tying in, a peep or tying in a D-loop or adjusting my bow or whatever. So you feel a little more confident if you're actually going to work on it yourself. But Andrew, what about you, Mr. Bow Tech?
I just get the crossbow. I know that's going to make people mad, but I did the exact same thing, okay? When I was, like, I don't know, probably 16 or 17, if people don't know, like, my backstory, I hunted as a kid. I killed deer as a kid with a rifle. We didn't really bow hunt when I was a kid. I always hunted with my dad. He passed away when I was 14. And then that's when I started hunting with the George family, which people have heard me mention on various podcasts, Mr. Benny and those guys. Well, like I mentioned it last week, they didn't bow hunt. We squirrel hunted, small game hunted until gun season came in and we gun hunted. Well, I started, when I got to be old enough to have my driver's license, I wanted to go more than I was able to go with the George family. So I started hunting my local WMA, and that's how I got into public land hunting. Well, I was 16. I was hunting with all my hand-me-down stuff from my dad, and I didn't know what I was doing. Did not know what I was doing at all. That's the reason this podcast exists. It's because I wanted to make this podcast for people like that, who just did not know where to start on public land. So I'm like a 16-year-old trying to go and figure out public land, trying to figure out how to find deer, trying to figure out how to hunt, because I just hunted food plots and stuff growing up. And I did the whole bow hunting thing because on WMAs in Alabama, you can only gun hunt on certain weekends. So even in gun season, you still have to bow hunt most weekends. And I just had like a lot of struggles with bow hunting. Like I was losing confidence. It just, kind of like he's talking about. I just lost confidence and it was overwhelming. So I got a crossbow and I went out and I
Oh,
started.
you had a crossbow?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Oh,
that.
dude, I started waxing deer with a crossbow. I killed a couple, got my confidence back, switched back to a compound. If people got a problem with it, cool. You can go kick rocks. I mean, I don't care.
I feel like we should just both go buy crossbows.
Yeah, I mean, like I get it. It's controversial. I think people make a way bigger deal out of it than they need to. If you're overwhelmed and you want to use a crossbow and that's what's going to get you into the woods and get you started, go for it. Like, don't be ashamed about that. Like, if people want to give you a hard time about it, you tell them to go kick rocks. I mean, like, that's all there is to it. Like Jacob said though, the compound bow, like, that's extremely rewarding. And if you are feeling overwhelmed and not confident, the only way you're going to build confidence is by just going out and doing and screwing it up and just and being persistent and not quitting. Because when you struggle through stuff like that, that's how you get your confidence.
Another great example. So, even like the like Aaron from the Hunting Public talks about this, about like, you don't have to have like a super extended range to be a bow hunter. Like, you need, if you feel comfortable shooting out to 20 yards, set a hard precedent that, like, I'm not going to shoot a deer past 20 yards.
Oh yeah.
And learn to set up for that. And that's how I started out bow hunting. Because, like, when I started out bow hunting, I didn't have any, like, my uncle's bow hunted, but like I never even asked for like tips or anything from those guys.
Yeah.
I got my first compound bow was a hand-me-down bow from Anthony.
Yeah.
The old High Country Carbon Light, okay? And, dude, all I would do, I didn't even know how to sight the thing in. Like, that's probably when I talked to him about how to, like, you got to move your pin around and everything in order to, get everything sighted in. Never paper tuned the bow, nothing like that. But I felt comfortable shooting, like, 20, 25 yards. I felt pretty comfortable. And it was just, like, one of those things that, like you said, at some point, you might get that edge to go back to a compound bow, especially after you have some success maybe with a crossbow.
Yeah.
But, like, if you don't feel comfortable shooting 40 yards, don't shoot 40 yards.
Yeah.
Like, if you feel like 15 and in's your range, well, okay, try to give you the challenge of setting up where you're going to have a 15-yard shot or a 20-yard shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't worry about what other guys are doing. You see other guys, great example, like Hunter Hogan, who's like a wizard when it comes to archery and shooting.
Yeah.
Dude's dropping bombs at 70, 80 yards, no problem. Don't worry about trying to be like that. Like, if your comfort range is 25 and in or 30 in, that's your range, and that's how you need to step and try to hunt that mindset. And don't try to worry about extending your range like you might see other guys who just are extremely proficient with their archery equipment. You don't have to necessarily do what they do. Figure out what works best for you and make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. And like, it sounds like you're just kind of anxious about going, and the only answer to anxiety about anything is to just, like, go do it. Action is the answer. So, like, if you're nervous about going out there with a bow, or if you're nervous about going out there in general, like, just do it, man. I mean, that's really the only way that you're going to get over that, is like, you just got to go and try. And like I said, the bow is super rewarding. I recommend it. But if that's not something you want to take on right now, then, if you want a crossbow, go get a crossbow. If you want to wait for rifle season, wait for rifle season. It's kind of up to you. But at the end of the day, you just got to get out there and start small, start doing something. It might be like a 2-hour hunt. It might be a scouting session, just like whatever you got to do to kind of cure that anxiety. Because every time you go, you'll get a little bit more confident. So, all right. Next up, this is from Jake. He didn't give his last name. He said, can you guys talk about hunting in ag country where the fields are on top and the woods are in the small intermittent creek drainages in the bottoms? I'll be the first to say I don't have a ton of experience hunting anything like that. I think that our recent episode with Corey Brown
100%. That's what I was going to say.
For sure relate to this. So if you haven't heard that, I think it's episode 526. Go listen to that, because we're talking about hunting those smaller creek drainages. It's not quite ag country per se. It's not like bean fields and stuff. He's hunting more cattle country, but I think the same principles apply. So I would go listen to that episode and refer back to that. But I just don't have really any experience hunting in that.
No, I haven't either. I mean, yeah, episode 526 with Corey Brown is what I would look at for that aspect. And more than likely, depending on the time of year you're going to be hunting, that, observation sits are going to be a big part. And again, Corey talked about that. So yeah, I would listen to episode 526.
All right. This is from Jacob McBride. He actually messaged us on Instagram originally, and I told him to write in with an actual Q&A on the show. He said, "Hey, I'm the guy with 7,000 acres. Wondering." So backstory: he's got like 7,000 acres of like primo land here in Alabama that like nobody else is hunting. I can't remember exactly how he came onto this
Do you
property.
marry into the family? Is there another daughter I could marry into? Jeez, dude.
Do you have any options for Jacob?
Yeah.
He's got a sweet setup.
Yeah, Jacob. Hook,
All right.
hook Jacob up.
He said, "I'm the guy with 7,000 acres wondering what the most efficient way to hunt the property is. Only 5 or 6 people hunt it, and I've killed nice deer, but I feel like I'm always too scattered out across the property. We have 82 food plots and all kinds of creeks and bottoms, and just wanted more info on how maybe to dial in on some of the nicer deer and kill them more consistent. Whether I should stay spread out or try to dial in on 1 or a couple hundred of acres." What I would do if I was blessed with your situation,
Oh my god, I can't imagine. Oh my god, that'd be amazing.
I would cast a wide net and find a deer that I want to go after, and then narrow down on that deer, because there's probably some freaking studs on that property. There's
do you
probably
know what county it's in?
God, I think it might be like kind of black belt area.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Hey, Jacob, I don't know what your guest policy is, but listen, dude, if you need somebody
Yeah,
to come
hey,
out there, hit us up.
Yeah, we got some free time this
If
fall.
y'all want some,
we'll make some time.
if y'all want some does killed, dude,
Listen.
we're your guys.
I would look. Those food plots probably be a pretty good place to start.
If there's
you know.
if there's 82 food plots and there's only 5 or 6 people that hunt it,
Yeah,
there's got to be some food plots that don't get pressured. And like, we always talk kind of down about food plots because typically it's about like more pressured properties or public land. But like, if there's that little pressure, there's gonna be bucks using them during daylight, especially the ones that just don't get as much pressure. Especially if it's like harder to get back into, you can't take a 4-wheeler back in there real easy or a truck back in there. Like, there's gonna be something of like that you're probably gonna have some deer using. But
yeah, I mean, like the pressure, like even if there's only 5 or 6 people, like man, it'd be hard for 5 or 6 people to put a lot of pressure on 7,000 acres. But man, like targeting a buck, I feel like I would go out there with like all the trail cameras that I have, and I'd start putting them on the food plots that looked the best, and I would put cameras on the food plots and just see if you get them, even if they're at night.
And make mock scrapes on your food plots.
Yeah, make mock scrapes, or if you don't have a lot of trail cameras, maybe if you only have a couple, put some out, or if you don't have any, go look for tracks in those food plots.
Also, I'd be identifying your different doe groups on that property. If you have that much property and you're gonna have a bunch of different doe groups all over it, I don't know what the habitat's like, but you're talking about a bunch of creek drainages and stuff like that, I would truly try to hone in on where your does are spending a lot of time and try to get them on camera, because your rut's probably going to be later in January if it is down in the Black Belt.
Yeah.
And then focus on the best terrain features. And if it's more kind of flat land, I'm thinking about the Black Belt, a lot more flat land, very little topography change, where you just have some really good thickets, especially if maybe you have cedars on the property or something like that deer are really going to hold up in during the rut. And really trying to capitalize on some of these different paths of travel, especially if you're able to go out during gun season, if it isn't like a bow-only lease or something like that, and just target your different doe groups. And again, travel corridors that go in between them. And especially on a property like that, if you got some, whether it's power lines, gas lines, long road beds that you can sit in between thickets, again, specifically gun hunting, I mean, you could have some unbelievable hunts like that if you can figure out where different doe groups are, kind of placed at, and how you can kind of watch a straightaway going in between them, and be able to kind of get an opportunity at a good buck.
Yeah, I mean, this is totally a place where I would try to locate a target buck, because man, there's probably a giant deer on that property if it's that low of pressure.
Chills.
And because I remember, I think he might have sent me like a picture of the map. I can't remember if it was him or someone else, of like where it looks so good. I was like, oh my gosh, dude. Whew. That's pretty nice. But yeah, I would try to locate a target buck, and you could like hop around, but 7,000 acres is a huge area. And I would this is like for real, where I would try to locate either some bucks that I wanted to go kill, like specifically like a large buck I want to go kill, or just an area that maybe had a lot of bucks in it, or just an area that I really liked. And I would kind of hone in on certain areas.
Now, to go about finding that deer, also when you're looking at the map, trying to find the most diverse habitat on that property.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
So like where you have the most different habitat edges come together. So like, and a classic example for us, if it's probably not how your property sets up, but if you're like in hill country and it's a bunch of logging activity where you have 2 or 3 or 4 different age clear cuts kind of all coming together in a certain spot. You have a hardwood drainage or hardwood SMZ that runs through it. Areas like that is a great place to put trail cameras at. Again, implement mock scrapes and just try to get inventory of different bucks in those areas and kind of capitalize on it. Because, dude, you're in a unbelievable
Dream
opportunity.
scenario.
Like, dream scenario.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Super,
God.
super awesome. Man, I really hope that, Jacob, you write in. Wait, what was his name? Was it Jacob? Yes. Jacob, I hope you write in and let us know how you end up doing this season, because I'm very curious to hear how you do. But I would break it down into a bite-sized chunk. I'd pick an area and really hone in it, because if you're killing good deer right now, I don't know what you're calling a good deer, but I don't know. There's probably bigger deer than what you're killing on the property. That like live out. Not that sounded bad.
No. I just did some calculation, dude. If this is a lease and it's like any average lease, dude, that is.
Because, I mean, the way he wrote the question, it sounds like he thinks there's bigger deer out there. So, like, all I'm saying is, like, if you're bouncing around and you're killing good deer, just imagine if you really drill down on a property. You could probably kill great deer. If you really drill down on an area where one of those great deer lives, that cream of the crop, top 1%.
What would be a good podcast episode to recommend for that?
Oh, man, I don't know. Like, for that specific situation, I feel like you could take Richard Manry. Richard Manry would be a good one, I think.
Okay. I was thinking Josh Driver, too.
Yeah, episode 141 with Josh Driver.
Well, the new one. Is it 510 or 500?
Yeah, I think it's 512, I think. Let's look.
It's on YouTube.
So, I think it's like 512. We did an episode with Josh Driver. Originally, it was episode 141. Definitely listen to that one. And then with Richard Manry, that is episode 464. That'd be a good one to listen to as well. Write in. Want to see how it goes. All right, we got some reviews from Apple Podcasts. Appreciate everybody writing in new reviews. We love reading them every week, and we try to read off new ones every single outro.
Yeah, guys, hey, listen, if you have success having, using tips and tactics from the podcast from different podcast guests, not only write in a listener success story, which we're getting in a ton of those every single week from you guys. And again, that link's down in the show notes as well and on the YouTube channel. So you can actually go and actually click that link and fill out your listener success form. But also, if you have success, definitely go leave us a 5-star review, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'd love to hear about it and talking about a little bit more about, those episodes that really were impactful for you. But we got our first one up for this week.
All right, this is from Pastor Nolan. He said, finding legit feed trees, 5 stars. When I first found the feed tree, I thought I was going to see nothing but turkey because the ground had been scratched and leaves had been moved around. Almost didn't check my trail camera. That's how bad I didn't want to be let down. But the droppings on the ground gave me hope that it was deer. Glad to hear I'm not the only one that notices the ground being tore up when looking for and finding feed trees. So, yep, that's a reference back, I think, to episode 510 with Rick Cope. Excellent episode on finding feed trees if you guys haven't heard that one yet.
All right, so this is our next review. This is from Matt Denny 07, titled, started listening a couple months ago and I'm hooked, 5 stars. Recently moved back to Alabama after a little over a decade in the military. So happy to have a hunting podcast that's based in my home state. I grew up hunting on clubs from Weyerhaeuser land close to Tuscaloosa, but I fell in love with the public land when I was stationed in South Carolina. I plan on chasing deer in blank this season with my bow with a 50 cal muzzleloader.
Named an area.
Or actually 50 cal Air Force air rifle. What is that?
It's an air rifle.
Air Force air rifle.
Is
that military issued?
No.
Still early in the season. Still early in the season, but the feed tree episodes in this week's episode with Jason Red are going to play a huge part in my season this year. Looking forward to finding a lot of white oaks on north-facing slopes in the coming weeks. Keep it up. Definitely my current favorite podcast. Matt Denny.
Appreciate it, Matt. All right, dude. So we got a lot coming up here over the next couple weeks. We're going to be going to Arkansas. We got a bunch of really good podcasts lined up that are going to be coming out. So I'm excited, man.
Yep.
favorite time of year.
Absolutely. So appreciate y'all again listening. Appreciate y'all watching on YouTube. And again, appreciate everybody that's been buying some Southern Outdoorsman merch. Got, again, a bunch of hats still available. Still have some t-shirts available. So again, as we're getting into November, guys, if you want any Southern Outdoorsman merchandise, go ahead and purchase it. You can get down the show link or the show notes below by the link. And also, Andrew's already mentioned, if you kill a deer and write in a listener success story and you're wearing some Southern Outdoorsman apparel, whether it's a hat or a shirt, we're going to send you a little goodie bag, a little gift.
Yep.
I don't know. Box, whatever, sent over to you for again wearing some Southern Outdoorsman apparel in your listener success story photos. So appreciate the support, guys. Appreciate y'all watching. Appreciate y'all listening, and we're gonna catch you back here on next week's episode from the Southern Outdoorsman podcast. And remember, y'all stay Southern.